Today on Chat Off the Mat, I welcome Dr. Leslie Becker-Phelps, a renowned psychologist, therapist, speaker, and author whose work is about helping people understand their inner selves and what they need to become emotionally and psychologically healthy. Dr. Leslie is the author of several books, including her most recent, The Insecure in Love Workbook, a step-by-step guidance to help you overcome anxious attachment and feel more secure with yourself and your partner. There she weaves together attachment theory, self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-compassion. She has developed a model called STEAM and the concept of compassionate self-awareness, which can develop greater empathy and compassion, which enables you to nurture security within yourself and your relationships. Welcome, Dr. Leslie Becker-Phelps.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
And I am so happy and grateful that you're here. Just a little back story. I met Dr. Leslie at a presentation that she was giving nearby. We live in nearby areas. And I felt that the presentation, I wanted so much more. So I knew her book was coming out and I was really interested in the topic. And we will talk about that today. So I invited her to come on to the show. And when her book recently became published, she agreed to. So I'm really grateful that you're here today. And I know my audience will love to hear what you have to say about the topics in your book. So the first thing, if you can just tell us about yourself.
Wow, that's a broad question about myself.
But yeah, whatever you want to share with us about what brought you to what you do, helping people.
Right. Well, yeah, I always enjoyed connecting with people, helping people. So that was a focus from early on. Actually, when I was in high school, and you're kind of looking for activities, things you might want to do, I signed up to be part of a program called Women Helping Women. And I think the person who was running it was getting an advanced degree in either social work or psychology and was setting up this program. And so as a high school student, I was trained to be on this crisis line. And it was so women, I was a very young woman at the time, was helping anybody who might call in whatever difficulties they had. And so that was my first step into the world of really helping others at that level. Kind of fast forward, I went through graduate school, got my doctorate in psychology, but always really, I like helping people and I really enjoy the therapy I do, but I also am someone who needs diversity. So, and I like to really learn about things. So that's how I started to bring together this idea of doing therapy, but then exploring more of what can really help people. I worked as the director of a women's trauma program. So on the heels of that, I was exploring other things like positive psychology, which is great. But I kept saying, but what about the people who can't use these things? There's some great tools out there, but what about when they fall short? What's going on? And that got me to explore attachment theory, and eventually write the first book, which was Insecure Love. So the workbook's just coming out because it seems that people really have found the first book very helpful. So I expanded that, and that's how we got to where we are. In between there, I then was exploring and expanding this concept of compassionate self-awareness, which I look forward to sharing with you, and had developed the STEAM, which is just there are 5 domains of self-awareness. So when we say in all areas of lives, people are like, oh, you should be introspective or develop self-awareness. But really, what does self-awareness mean? So that's where I came up with the STEAM to try to help guide people with, okay, yes, I want to learn more about me, but how do I do it? What does that mean? So that brings us here.
So we'll start by, I'm going to ask you about attachment theory. You already mentioned about attachment theory. And if you can talk about what that is, and also there are different styles of attachments, if you can mention what those are as well.
Sure. So our attachment system is based in a wiring. It's our evolutionary system for survival. We connect with others in multiple levels. So we're born into the world. You're an infant. Infants look up at their caregivers pretty quickly. They're connecting because they need that connection in order for someone to take care of them. because let's face it, an infant's not going to make it out on the wild in the wild by themselves. So we are wired with this attachment system, and we connect that way. And from infancy through a childhood into adulthood, when we look at people, there's this connection you feel. And beginning at a young age, you develop a foundation in your connections. What you learn is when you look to someone else who's older and wiser, you learn, is someone available for me? Are they there? Are they supportive? And you develop what I would call a model of others, how available someone is to you. And that is from available, it's a range. So it's not on-off switch, a range from available to not available. And at the not available range, the person could be, the other person can be not available because they're just not there. They've abandoned you. They could be harsh and kind of mean towards you, cruel. They could be inept. So there's a lot of ways somebody could not be available. So you have this model of others where you take in, how do I expect others to be? In those initial relationships, the responses of their others, if they're emotionally attuned to you, you get a sense of, oh, wow, I'm cared about, I'm loved. Now, this isn't like a thought, like I'm saying it out now. It's a sense, it's an experience. I am loved. So even when you're crying, you're loved. And not only loved, but like the person is attuned to you. So you have a sense that the caregiver feels your pain and can respond in a way that's comforting. And that is, you develop your model of self, the model of self from either I'm lovable, I'm worthy, I have value, I'm okay, like in that good solid way of okay. The range from there all the way to I'm unlovable, I'm essentially flawed, I'm deficient, I have no value, something in that range. Different words resonate for different people, but it's that range. So when we talk about attachment theory, it's based on the styles that people have are based on those two models, model of self and model of others. When you put them together, you end up with 4 different attachment styles. And I do lay it out for people. I find it less helpful for me than looking at the model of self, model of others, because that gives you some direction on where you can focus on to help yourself. It's not just like, oh, I am securely attached or I am preoccupied. That's another attachment style. Like, okay, great, but what do you do with that? Whereas if you realize like, oh, I feel like I have no value. Oh, my direction is to move towards wanting to have value. I feel like others are emotionally unavailable. Oh, wow, I would like to be in a place where I feel like I can really turn to and rely on others. And so you develop that. There are, like I said, 4 attachment styles. There's only one securely attached style.
I noticed that.
Yeah, there's only one.
I noticed that out of 4, there's only one.
Absolutely. But so before I even explain what the attachment styles are, look, it's a general category. Every person who's securely attached is going to look a little bit different because it's based on those 2 models, model of self, model of others, that are arranged. So you can be in different places in the attachment. So in the first book, the way I describe it is like with colors. You could be red, but you could be orangey red or yellowy red or, just red. And attachment styles are like that. So just knowing your attachment style doesn't say everything about you. It just gives you a range. So somebody who's securely attached has a model of self where they feel lovable, they feel worthy. And when they're in a relationship, they see others as emotionally available. So what this means is that if you feel threatened, remember, this is based on a survival mechanism. If you feel threatened, if you're struggling, what do? Well, if you have a sense of yourself as capable, you can turn inward and look to yourself, but you also see others as available to you, so you can turn to others. It helps you feel very secure in yourself and in the world.
Right.
If your model of others or model of self is less secure, you don't feel so good about yourself, you don't feel lovable or valued, you start to have anxiety just being in the world. So we say you're more anxiously attached because you have anxiety just being. So someone who feels not lovable, but they see others as emotionally available to them, that's great. So if they feel threatened, they can turn to others and get that help. And so that engages them, supports them in the world. The problem with this is that if you feel emotionally like you are not worthy or lovable, great, others are available, but why are they going to help you? Because you're not worth it. So what happens is people who tend to feel like they're not okay in some way, they have to work at it. So they'll try to be really extra, extra, extra nice. Some of your listeners may be like,
People
oh,
pleasers.
yeah,
Yeah.
or they have to earn a lot of money, or they have to have prestige, or they have to look beautiful, but they have to earn the caring of the other. So they become preoccupied with getting that attention and that caring. And we call that a preoccupied attachment style. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Makes
So
sense.
then on the other side, for the people who feel that they are worthy and lovable and capable, but they don't think others are available to them. Remember, this people who are securely attached, they feel lovable, but other people are available to them. But people who are like, oh no, I'm good, but I can't trust others because they're going to be mean to me, or they're going to let me down, or I just can't open up to them. For them, they're going to avoid those relationships, or avoid being, they'll still being in relationship. We all need a relationship, but they'll avoid being open. So this is very interesting. So they are dismissing of others, right? They'll dismiss others. But what we don't realize, if we're more towards this attachment style, is that we're also dismissing of ourselves. Yeah, you feel good, but the way you feel good is to minimize your distress. Like, oh, I shouldn't worry about that, or that's stupid to worry about. And so they push that stuff down. So they are dismissing of their own experience and dismissing of others. So we call that a dismissing attachment style.
Hmm.
Is this making sense?
Yeah,
You with me?
it is making sense. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always find this easier with paper because I can kind of point at the styles. There is one style I haven't mentioned, and that is what we call either disorganized or fearful avoidant. And that's the person who feels like I am not lovable, I have no value. And then also they feel like others are not available to them. So when you put those together, what happens is the person is struggling. They have some kind of difficulty they're facing, and they say, oh my gosh, how do I get through the difficulty? I'm having a really hard time. They turn to themselves. Oh, that doesn't work because I'm not worthy. Then they turn to somebody else. Oh, they're not going to be there for me. And so it becomes very disruptive, and they have very disruptive relationships because they take a step forward and a step back, and they can't find the place where they can get comfort. And that's a very painful place to be. Fortunately, not as many people are caught in that style. Also, very importantly, just because you have a foundation in a particular style doesn't mean you're doomed to be there forever. This is why we work on this in therapy, or you can have life experiences that help change it, that help you develop a better sense of yourself or more openness to others. Also, it's very important to understand that not only can it change over time, but you may have a different attachment style in different relationships or in different areas of your life. So it's a bit amorphous, but that's good because that means you can direct it. So if you're in a relationship that's, say, like kind of abusive, or the person's critical, you start feeling worse and worse and worse about yourself. Eventually you get out of that relationship, and now you're in a relationship with someone who's caring and supportive and sees you positively. You start to feel better about yourself. Yes, you're taking it in from them at first, but hopefully with experience, you don't, not just taking it in from them, you start to build it up in yourself, so you can see these shifts over time and in different areas.
Well, one hopes, because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about myself, and I'm like, I probably have experienced all those attachment styles at one point or another, and they may have caused relationship breakdowns, or we're going to talk about awareness theory and self-awareness in a bit. But, you know, as a young child new to this world, you don't remember much about what happened then and how you were taken care of. So you're only going by what you're feeling today, and if you don't understand how you're relating to someone, having that awareness, you're either going to be stuck in that attachment style, or recognize that something needs to change in order to have healthier relationships. And that's where your book is really helpful, because as I'm going through it, you're talking about the pen and paper and having I looked at, it's the grid that you have,
Right, I
right?
have a grid.
You
What I
have a
do,
grid.
just for people who are listening,
Yeah.
I take the model of self and I put it along a
An access,
horizontal
right?
axis, and then I cross it with a vertical axis of the model of others. So what you end up with is like a big plus sign, and there's 4 quadrants, and then each of the quadrants is one of the attachment styles.
Right.
Just so
And
people understand.
you can do this exercise not just on, we talk about relationships, and a lot of people right away they think about their primary, maybe intimate relationship, but there's many, many relationships which we can have. And I'm even as I'm going through this book, I'm even thinking about the relationship that I have with my children. And I'm like, is there like this attachment thing that I have there? Like, okay, like, all right, he's not responding to me. Why is that? You know,
Right,
things
right.
like that. So it's helpful on many levels to go through this exercise so that you're aware of, and you can even almost find out like a common denominator. Like, okay, you take 5 relationships and you do this exercise, and you're like, okay, well, I'm more of a secure attachment. This is awesome. Or I'm more here. And then, work with that
Yeah,
knowledge.
yeah,
Right.
that exercise that I have in the beginning of the book, I love it because it does have people do their attachment style in different relationships and then across time. So I have people look at like your mother when you were like young, and then your mother, say your relationship with your mother now, and then you can see that. Or maybe if you've been in other romantic relationships, you can plot those out and then look over time, has there been a shift or a trend? So it really opens up, the exercise helps to open up people's awareness of where they are in different relationships, different times of life. It's
Right.
really interesting.
Yeah, and you're not focusing so much on the relationship itself, although you are, because you do, it's about relating and how you respond to people, and that's, but it's really more about, okay, it's about me, or the person working on this. It's like I always, I've been on this earth for a while. I've had relationships, but I realize at the end it's I need to work on myself. I can't fix anybody else.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that's, people have asked, they said, yes, it's a relationship book, but so much of it's about self-awareness. I mean, I have some stuff about developing the relationship skills, but so much of it's about self-awareness, because how you show up in this world says so much. And also I include your relationship with yourself as well as your relationship with others. And I think that's an important concept, important way to think, that you're actually relating. It's not just you feel a certain way or think a certain thing about yourself, but you're relating to yourself.
right.
And so that can be shifted or changed.
Right. You have a relationship to yourself, or you should nurture that relationship to yourself, which you do talk about in your book as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right. So how might someone with an anxious attachment style behave or think differently in their relationship compared to someone with a more avoidant style, let's say? So just as an example to
Uh-huh.
give 2 perspectives.
Sure. So avoidant, for the purposes of today, we'll say avoidant and dismissing, that's what I had
Okay.
described, are the same. They're really not, but it's close enough for our purposes right now. So someone with an avoidant style of attachment or dismissing, they are more likely to dismiss what their partner brings to the relationship. So if they're having a bad day, they're not going to turn to their partner for support. They're more likely to go inside to work things out, to, develop whatever they need to develop on their own, to turn away from the partner. And in fact, if you have a dismissing style or avoidance style, or if you have a partner who does, you may find that when you approach your partner, that they may actually push you away when you try to help. They may act as if you just did a bad thing. And that's because it doesn't feel supportive. They're expecting that you would be letting them down or hurting them in some way. So they need to be pushing away when you're trying to help. Whereas someone with an anxious style, they're someone, even though they have that model of self where they're not feeling so worthy, they want the help from someone else. So they're going to turn to their partner and ask for help and maybe look for comfort or a hug, or something positive. And so they'll pull for that to help them feel better. It's really very different. It's a very different style, very different look.
Yeah, almost the opposite ends. But the person with the anxious style, they may look to their partner, but they may not necessarily get that.
No,
Um, right.
one of
And
the
that's a whole
most
nother.
Yeah, well, one of the most common relationship difficulties is what we call a pursuit withdrawal relationship or cycle, and that's where you get someone who is very anxiously attached, connected with somebody who's avoidant. So the person who is anxious, so they come together, they fall in love, they both feel good connected, right? So that all works, and then that initial limerence kind of fades a bit, and the person who's anxiously attached turns to the one who's more avoidant and kind of reaches out to them. That person then backs up because they don't want that level of closeness. That's not comfortable. Then the person who's anxious steps forward again, and that other person steps back. And then what happens is eventually the person who's anxious says, "Oh, this isn't going to work," and so they back way off. Well, the person who was avoidant didn't want them to leave; they just didn't want to be so close. So now they step forward,
Right.
and then the person who's anxious is like, "Oh, wow. Maybe they really do care. Maybe they really do like me." So they reach out, and that person backs up, and they end up in this cycle. And it's a very common cycle. It happens in different ways.
Yeah. And you know, you think about when I hear you say this, I think about, when your first relationships or intimate relationships are in high school, and that happens a lot because, you hear about that or you experience that, and then you wonder, like, is that the right relationship? If you understand attachment styles at that young age, which I wish I had read your book. Your book was out when I was younger, would have saved me a lot of heartache. Um, do you say, do you start to become more aware of what's happening and then understand if those are the right people you should be with or not. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and
Well, it's also the age where your brain is kind of
exploring.
becoming more fully online. So you're beginning to think more and be able to introspect more and understand more. And you're trying to pull this all together with your hormones,
Yeah, of
starting to kick up.
course.
There's a lot to work out.
Yeah, that's true. Um, how does one move more towards it as a more secure style of attachment?
So this is where I think it's very helpful to think in terms of those two models. So if you are have a model of self where you feel to whatever degree that you're not lovable or worthy or you don't have value, something's not okay about you, it's very clear if you want to be more secure, you want to move towards feeling better about you. I mean, it's just, to me, seems just clear, obvious.
Right.
And then you can look at your model of others. Do you see others as emotionally available? Generally speaking, if they, show themselves to be solid people. And if you see them as emotionally available, that's great. You're going to work more on yourself. If you see people as not emotionally available, even the people that you would expect to be, then maybe that's something you need to work on. And that gives you a focus of, where you want to go towards trying to see how do you help yourself see or develop relationships where people are available to you and where you also feel good about you. You put those together, you're more secure.
Do you ever encourage? I'm sure couples come to you because you do couples therapy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever encourage people, even if they come in by themselves and talk to you about this, to speak to their partners about talking about attachment theory, or maybe finding out why are you avoiding me, or do you understand creating that communication?
Yeah. So as you've mentioned, self-awareness is central to what it is I talk about, the way I think about this. And that my answer to that question really goes back to the awareness thing. So for you to feel good about yourself, to have a positive relationship with yourself, you have to know you. You have to get to know you. You have to have self-awareness, because without that, how do you feel good about you? Because you don't know who you are. So you want to develop that self-awareness. Then with that self-awareness, you hopefully develop some empathy for whatever your struggles are, some compassion for your difficulties. You become more supportive of yourself. You start to feel better about you. That's wonderful. If you want a relationship a close relationship with someone else, you want to do the same thing with them. You want to get to know them, develop greater awareness of them, not just the external, but also internally what's happening for them.
Mm.
If you can understand it with your head and your heart, you can't just do it with your head. You have to also do it with your heart. Then, and by the way, we call this mentalizing, getting to know someone with your head and heart.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can have empathy for them and you can have compassion for them. And let's face it, when people are in close relationships, they sometimes hurt each other. And they don't mean to. So you would have forgiveness. And this helps you to feel closer or develop a closer relationship. So yes, I work with a lot of couples or individuals who are wanting to work on their relationships. And we talk a lot about how do they get to know themselves and how do they come to understand their partners from kind of the inside. So I hope that answers.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's great. I know we're going to talk more about it as you were talking about. I'm like, this sounds like the mentalizing, which took me a while to understand it, but then, of course, I was like, yes, that makes a lot of sense, and it's part of your STEAM model. So before we talk about the STEAM model, I'm going to segue into that. I want to talk a little bit about the autonomic nervous system, which makes up, I guess, the two branches, and I talk a lot about that in yoga. I teach yoga. We were talking about that before. The parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems, because you talk about that in your book as well. So if we can talk about that.
So, boy, there's a lot here. So I'm going to keep this very basic because otherwise we won't get to anything else.
No, basic
each segment of what we're talking about, I'm like, wow, that could be like a whole big conversation by itself.
It'd be a whole course.
Yeah, whole course. So I'm working on it.
I know you are. I have a feeling you are.
I plan to be working on it. Anyway, so I do have a chapter in my book. I think it's Preparing to Heal is what I end up calling it. In order to take steps forward in trying to grow and to heal, you have to be in the headspace to be able to do that. So you have to be able to think clearly to start making some choices that are different or to try things that are uncomfortable. And when we're all stirred up, right, we're really afraid or angry or just our emotions are big, then we're likely to repeat old problematic behaviors and not venture into other ones. So we need to calm our bodies down so that we can work more productively, more constructively. Remember, this is based in our bodies, our survival system. And so when your body is feeling disrupted or you're in a fear state, you need to find a way to calm yourself down. So the first thing is, if you're in a fear state, is, oh my gosh, do I have something to be this afraid of? Our bodies are set up. If there's a mountain lion coming after you, you darn well want to have that extra adrenaline and, get away. So, but in our lives, day to day, often what happens is other things are being triggered. We're afraid of things. We're afraid maybe somebody's going to get really upset with us and it's not realistic. So we have to know how to calm ourselves down to think more clearly. And actually, even if you're in a physical situation where you need to do something to get safe, it also helps to calm yourself down so you can think clearly as to what those steps would be. And this is what you're talking about, is it's based in our nervous system. And we need to calm the body. So we have the autonomic nervous system, which revs us up, right? Gets us aroused, increases our arousal, our energy level, so we can outrun our friend who's also running from the lion. Or like things are okay now and your body is still like churning really fast, how to calm it down. And that's your parasympathetic nervous system. So one of the things we talk about is, how do you engage your parasympathetic nervous system? How do you calm your nervous system? This ties into something called polyvagal theory, but there's also just different theories about your body. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a lot out there about this,
right?
But it's about calming your body. And how do you do that? We do that in a lot of ways. So you do it by learning some breath work. And there's a lot of different kinds of breathing you can do to calm your body. You may decide to take a bath. Maybe that's helpful. Listening to music, getting together with a friend. There's a whole bunch of ways that you can calm your body. The first actually is if you are in a situation that's causing you to be distressed, you want to separate from it. So if you are having an argument with your partner and it just keeps ratcheting up, what you might want to say is, I think I need to take a break. And you don't take a break forever. We'll come back in an hour, or I'll come back whenever. And in that break time, you can use it to disengage from what's causing you to get more upset, and you calm yourself down. When you're in a calmer place, then you can reapproach thinking about whatever the situation is and trying to find a better way to move through that.
Right. Perfect. I love that. I think it was really important because I know personally, I've experienced overreacting when I get triggered by something, and I know a lot of people out there may have as well. So before overreacting, we pause and we do an exercise. And I think steam, your model of steam helps with moving towards that parasympathetic state as well.
I want to add one other thing that I didn't say. So broadly speaking, we want to calm our bodies. But if you think in terms of attachment theory, the model of self and model of others, because we want both of those to be strong. We want our relationship with ourselves to be strong and that we can help ourselves, and we want our relationship with others to be strong. So when you are looking for ways to calm you, think in terms of, make a list of the things that calm you when you're just within yourself, listening to music, going for a walk, but also connecting with others. So talking with this friend or that friend, playing with your dog or your cat, because those qualify as others.
Yes.
You want to have resources in both places. If you only have resource within yourself or within others, then it's really important that you build the other resources up. That will move you towards being more secure.
Right.
Strong.
Good resources.
Good resources. Right.
Good resources. Right. So let's introduce your STEAM model, and if you can explain what it is and how it's used.
Sure, absolutely. So this begins with the idea that it's important for us to get to know ourselves, to have greater self-awareness. And you'll see that across different kinds of therapies, in religion, in yoga, different areas. If it's about having a sense of well-being, almost categorically, they all look at self-awareness, they just define it differently. So I did a lot of research and tried to pull together what I found in different areas. And what I realized were there were certain general domains of awareness that different therapies or other experiences focus on. So I broke it into STEAM. I have 5 categories. So there's S is for sensations. This is what's happening in your body. What do you sense in your body? Your heart beating fast, your stomach clenching. What do you sense in your body? T is for thoughts. What are your thoughts? What do you think about your thoughts? So we have thoughts going on all the time, but sometimes we're like living in them. So we want you to be able to observe the thoughts, and then you may have thoughts about your thoughts. I think that my partner is cheating on me, and I'm really angry with myself for continuing to go back to that thought. E is for emotions. What am I feeling? What do I feel about what I'm feeling? I'm feeling jealous, and I'm having those angry feelings. So there's a thought that goes with it, and the emotion goes with it. Right. A is for actions. So what are my actions and my reactions? My actions are I start yelling at my partner, or I text them a ridiculous number of texts because I'm trying to grab onto them. Actions. And then M is for something called mentalizing. That's less obvious. And it's a very jargony word, but it is the word that best fits. And that is when you can understand what's going on in someone, some of their mental states, then you're going to understand their actions. So what do I mean by that? If you understand someone's thoughts, their feelings, their desires, their fears, their inner experience, if you get that, not only intellectually get it, like you could summarize it, but emotionally from your heart, kind of connect with it. Then with your head and your heart, you can get where they're coming from, and you're able to have empathy because you can imagine what it's like in their shoes. You can have compassion. You feel their pain, and it hurts you to feel their pain. You can have forgiveness because you get where they're coming from. Even though they hurt you, they did something that was upsetting, you're able to forgive because you get them better. And those are some very important strengths to have in terms of developing a stronger relationship, moving through things better with someone. And it allows you to be more persistent and more curious, but curiosity is great because you can explore the different awarenesses. You pull all this together. So that's the mentalizing. And that pulls together the other areas of self-awareness.
Hmm.
And so you can mentalize, just to cap it, you can mentalize yourself and you can mentalize
Yep,
others.
the other person. In this model and it's wonderful and it's easy to remember as far as the acronym. And you can use this like if you're having a situation or anything. And like I said, I think you can use this outside of any relationship model as well, or example. You pause and you start to think about, if you get triggered, you're like, okay, like what are you feeling in your body? And you start to go through STEAM, and then you can become more grounded almost instantaneously, and your how you were going to react, that goes away, hopefully. And you're moving towards healing, because the more you do this, the more you're like reconditioning yourself to does that make sense? Like, am I right in a way?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. So one of the things about this in my developing it was that different people struggle in different areas. So one of the important things is to figure out where you're struggling and in what ways. And if you go through STEAM, that sometimes can help you.
Mm,
So you may realize that you're in your head all the time, but if you go through STEAM, you have no idea what's going on in your body. And emotions, you don't even know how to label them. So you're like, oh, I'm filling out the STEAM thing. And really, you could just write on a piece of paper, STEAM, drop them, like going down the paper, and then draw a line for each one and just fill out what you can
mm,
say about each one. And you'll start to see like, oh, I know how to do this, but I don't know what's going on here. And then you can work on those areas.
mm,
If you come up with like, I have no idea what's going on inside of me, sometimes people just get a block. Start with sensations. If you really don't know, it's a great place to start. And if you need to, you do a body scan, meaning you start at one end of your body. Let's say you start at your feet. Like, do you feel anything? Do you notice anything in your feet, in your calves, in your thighs, in your belly, chest, back, your neck, your head, all the way to the top of your head, your face? And as you do that, you may notice something. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be like, oh, I noticed
subtle.
subtle, right? Exactly. Right. This is a big yoga thing.
Yeah.
You want to be able to
Subtle.
be aware of your body. And so you notice maybe something subtly like, I didn't think there was anything, but maybe my chest is a little tight. And then if you keep your awareness there, you just stay there. It may get more tight or less tight. It may move. You may all of a sudden you notice that there's tension in your throat. Maybe there's tears in your eyes. And so you just stay with it. The more you can fill in kind of what's going on in your sensations, that's very often a wonderful portal to your emotions. Because
Mm,
then you could be like, oh, what emotions go with this? Which is trickier than you may think, because a lot of people confuse their thoughts with their emotions. What am I feeling? I'm feeling like I'm such an idiot. That's actually a thought, not a feeling. So if you're feeling, like an idiot, then it's like, oh, I'm thinking that. The feeling may be in part anger. But you want to break these things up so you get a fuller understanding of yourself.
right.
I have on my website, in the book, you can find a list of emotions. It's amazing how helpful it is to do that. So slowly you fill in each level of awareness.
Yeah, I have the book here, and I know I can't show people, but I was like, oh wow, this is awesome. You have like listed all these words. And it
Yeah.
really can help people identify what they're actually feeling. Like you said, we're always stuck in our heads, and we are. And then that's why I believe that there's, and we talked about it before about yoga, there's you know, the more we practice, or the more people do practice yoga, it internalizes our practice, and where we're able to feel what's going on in our bodies a little bit more. But practicing this exercise of steam, the more you do it, the more you are able to, realize the sensations. And then you'll get to a point where you're not actually stopping and doing the STEAM. You're starting to, it's like
Right.
second nature.
Exactly. It
Right.
becomes second nature.
Becomes second.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also because I study meridian theory as well, and chakra theory, that where the sensations, where you're feeling them in the body, relate or correspond to the subtle energy system, like the chakra system and the meridian theory, which we talk in Chinese medicine. I'll just give you a quick example.
Mm-hmm.
My one son started a job. He had to drive further and he never drove this far. And just thinking about it, I felt it in my legs, in my back, and that's the trunk. And then that's the fear, like the kidneys is the fear. And was feeling that and I knew right away. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
and I almost, in the legs or the fright and flight, I was frozen. So I was like, wow, this is not good.
I have a great exercise in the book on this, and it's a new exercise I came up with. I don't honestly see it anyplace else. There are some diagrams of outlines of bodies, and I have people
Yes.
color in where they're feeling an experience, and they use a different color depending on the level of intensity. And so you can start to learn to identify in your body where things are. And I learned in researching this book about how our bodily sensations really develop over time. So young children, they kind of freak out, they're having a tantrum or whatever. They generally don't have it discerned where they're having an experience. So they have it all over.
Mm.
As we get older, we start to hopefully become more aware that it can be more in particular areas of the body. And then as we got even older, it becomes less intense. So people say who become very overwhelmed by the intensity of emotions, they may mellow with age. And part of it's because our bodies are changing. It makes it the sensations less overwhelming, and then they can reflect on them better. So there's all these things that you can learn over your time, but also in the exercise, it helps you to give some focus and to identify like, oh, with these emotions, these are some of the sensations I tend to experience.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I do. I saw the models. Yeah, that's great because it'll help people focus on where these sensations, where they're feeling them. I love that. Love this. Um, you do mention in your book, I want to just make a quick quote that I loved. It says, by recognizing patterns of thinking, you can begin to question them. And I love that. You said about being curious. If you're
Mm-hmm.
not curious, you have to be curious.
Right.
This is how we heal.
It's how we heal.
Yeah, I love this. Um, what are your thoughts about? I'm going to shift a little bit.
Sure.
What are your thoughts about how attached people are to celebrities and influencers and social media and like they're you're gonna have like people in your office say, I'm so attached to this and this and this because of social media. It's gonna be a whole nother book you have to write.
I'm not sure how to answer that question. Can you just give me like an example or
I
something?
don't know. I'm just thinking like people are going to, it's a whole different attachment theory almost. Like, why are people so attached? Maybe we can just put it out there. Like, why are people so attached to TikTok and watching these people do what they do? I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just wondering myself,
Uh,
what's the attraction? Maybe. I don't know. I guess
this
maybe I'm a
is
different generation.
Yeah, this is a topic, and I have not fully researched. I think
No,
it's
it's fine.
expansion of technology and things moving fast.
Mm,
And we don't have a chance to do some of that self-awareness, some of that, because that requires some slowing down. We're
yeah.
like boom, 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 and people aren't slowing down.
Yeah.
And it is a concern, I know, for me and well, for a lot of people in our society, that there have been a lot more mental health problems. Children are having more problems. I saw some place where and I've got to go back and find the article or see what it's based on, but they tied it to beginnings of people really using smartphones. That if you look 10 years, 12 years after the smartphones came out, I forget when, like the end of the 90s or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yes.
that you see kids starting to have more problems.
Yeah. Oh,
They're not
that's interesting.
connecting in the same way. There's so much to be said. I mean, if you see a parent and they're focused on their phone or
Hmm.
on their iPad or whatever it is, if they're not face to face with their child, that's how children learn to go back to where we started, learn to feel regulated by the other person. They learn to develop a sense of who they are. If
Yep.
that's not happening, really, it has to be happening a lot. All those different moments in a day, if or anybody who has children, there's a zillion of them. Um, they
Right.
really add up to something. But if that's not happening, then we are not developing that. We're sidestepping the whole survival, the mechanism, the attachment system. We're not feeding it for people to develop a sense of who they are, what to expect of others. And that's seriously problematic.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with you. Well answered. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but I kind of thought the same thing when you were talking about attachment theory earlier. An image came to my mind of parents that I see often in their phone constantly and just totally ignoring their kids. And it's kind of sad, you
yeah.
know?
I don't know if you've ever heard of it. There's something called the still face experiment.
No.
People could actually Google it. I think there's a little videos of it. So years ago, they did an experiment where they had a parent, child's in like a high chair, and the child's playing, the mom's going back and forth with the child, and then the mom just stops, and she's just got a straight face, doesn't respond to the kid, very young kid, and the kid tries to, you see this child then acting in ways to try to engage the parent, and then starts like getting very dysregulated, very upset, very distressed, and then the mom clicks and she's like interacting with the child again, the child calms down. And so just by the lack of response, what it does to the child. So then someone interestingly did it with a parent looking at a phone, and the child gets the same response because the parent's not responding to the child.
Oh, interesting.
So you see the child getting all distressed because the parent's not responding.
Right.
So it's just concerning.
Well, you could see that it just walking around the mall, that's same, but it is concerning. I totally agree with you. Definitely agree with you. I'm going to ask one more question, and because I know we're going to wrap up soon, but you talk about finding meaning outside or finding meaning of life outside current relationships, which is important, right? So doing things that you love. So not just focusing on relationships, but also nurturing yourself and
Mm-hmm.
doing things that are important to you, right?
Right.
That are healthy.
Absolutely. Again, model of self and model of others. Everything I'm going to say is going to go back to being aware of both of those. So you want to develop a relationship with yourself that's positive and feels good, and you get a sense of well-being from that. And so that means doing activities that feed you. And then also the relationship.
Mm.
What I haven't really talked much about today, but comes with steam, if you really develop your self-awareness on all those levels, you will develop what I call compassionate self-awareness. We need self-compassion because when we face difficulties in the world, we need to be kind to ourselves, to support ourselves, to help ourselves move through difficult times. So you develop this compassionate self-awareness. And when you have that, you'll realize that you want to feel happy. You want to do things that make you feel good, not just in the relationship, but within you. So it motivates people to do just what it is you're talking about.
And your model leads to that self-compassion because at the end with the mentalizing, you're thinking about how you're reacting, how this is making you feel. So that's that self-compassion. And then you have the compassion for others. So cultivating self-compassion. I know that is a topic that is being explored a lot more now because people, people, it, it, they need to be reminded that you have to have that compassion for yourself, just like you would for someone else who's hurting.
And importantly, I talk about compassionate self-awareness. And you'll notice compassionate's the adjective. The real focus is self-awareness. So
Right.
yes, it gets people to self-compassion, but the tricky part when people talk about self-compassion, they're like, well, I can't do that. Well, that's just ridiculous. I'll stop. I won't be motivated, or they have negative responses to it, or I just don't know how. I just beat myself up and I can't stop. So if you think of compassionate self-awareness, there isn't pressure to make yourself be compassionate. Because that's like, when you're trying to fall asleep at like at night, you're like, okay, sleep now, sleep now. I need to sleep now. And you can't make yourself sleep. You just can't.
Right.
So you can't force compassion. It's the same thing. But if you develop the self-awareness in all the ways I've talked about, then one, self-compassion tends to come, but to the degree it doesn't, now you can begin to focus on that more from the awareness piece, and it helps to nurture it. That's why I make that distinction, because I think in the real world, it's often an important and essential distinction. Otherwise,
Yeah.
people feel like they're failing with being self-compassionate. They can beat themselves up for that.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, I love chatting with you.
Yeah, this has been great. I love this, and I appreciate you getting onto the podcast. And I'm going to put all the links for your book. It's already out there. Actually, I have a link for the book on my website, but I'll put all of Dr. Leslie's links as well. And I know she's done a lot. She's written books. She's also, I think, a regular author on Psychology Today as well. You've written a lot of
I do.
articles for
I have
them.
a blog on Psychology Today. I also have a new blog now on my website called Authentically You.
Yes,
So.
I love that.
Oh,
I love the
and
name of
don't
that.
want to forget my YouTube channel. Oh my gosh. I
Yes.
love doing that. I give you like these 3-4 minute videos on all these topics and just like little bite-sized things to think about. So, and I'm kind of getting a really nice community of people responding, and it seems like they're helpful. So
Well, that's wonderful. And the work you're doing is wonderful. So thank you for doing that.
thanks. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.